Good morning, children. In our last video, we saw that the narrator and his family members were traveling from Dehra to Lucknow in a train with their pets, a tiger, a squirrel, and a parrot. The tiger was very calm and gentle, but the parrot and squirrel were very restless. After some time, the grandmother and the parrot felt sleepy. Meanwhile, the narrator felt hungry and dragged the tiffin basket into the middle of the compartment. When he opened the lid of the basket, he could see grandfather's pet python inside the basket. The narrator was shocked and told the grandfather about the python inside the basket. Now let's see what happened next in the story. Grandfather joined me and together we looked down at what remained of the food. Pythons don't chew, they swallow. Outlined along the length of the large snake's sleek body were the distinctive shapes of a chicken, a pie, and 6 boiled eggs. We couldn't make out the sandwiches, but presumably these had been eaten too because there was no sign of them in the basket. Only a few pies remained. Evidently, the python did not care for apples. Grandfather snapped the basket shut and pushed it back beneath the bird. "We must not let grandmother see him," he said. "She might think we brought him along on purpose." "Well, I am hungry," I complained. So, when the narrator told that the python was inside the basket, the grandfather joined him, and together they looked down at the remainder of the leftover food. Except the apples, nothing was left. It had eaten everything. Grandfather then shut the basket and pushed it back under the bird, and told the narrator that he should not tell about this to the grandmother. Otherwise, she would think that they had brought him along on purpose. Just then, Chips returned from one of his forays and presented me with a peanut. "Thanks," I said. "If you keep bringing me peanuts all night, I might last until morning." But it was not long before I felt sleepy. So, Chips the squirrel used to go here and there to get food, and he brought some peanuts and gave it to the narrator. Grandfather had begun to nod, and the only one who was wide awake was the squirrel, still intent on investigating distant compartments. A little after midnight there was a great clamor at the end of the corridor. Grandfather and I woke up. Timothy growled in his sleep, and Popeye made complaining noises. Suddenly there was a cry of "Sap, sap!" Grandfather was on his feet in a moment. He looked under the bird. The tiffin basket was empty. "The python is out," he said, and dashed out of our compartment in his pajamas. I was close behind. About a dozen passengers were bunched together outside the washroom door. "Anything wrong?" asked Grandfather casually. "We can't get into the toilet," said someone. "There's a huge snake inside." "Let me take a look," said Grandfather. "I know all about snakes." The passengers made way for him, and he entered the washroom to find the python curled up in the wash basin. After its heavy meal, it had become thirsty, and finding the lid of the tiffin basket easy to pry up, had set out in search of water. Grandfather gathered up the sleepy, overfed python and stepped out of the washroom. The passengers hastily made way for them. As soon as the grandfather heard the cry, "Sap, sap," he looked under the bird and found that the basket was empty and the python was out. So About a dozen passengers were bunched together outside the washroom door, and he asked what was happening. And one of them said that there was a huge snake inside the washroom. Then the grandfather went inside the washroom and got back the python. Nothing to worry about, said grandfather cheerfully. It's just a harmless young python. He has had his dinner already, so no one is in any danger. And he marched back to our compartment with the python in his arms. As soon as I was inside, he bolted the door. Grandmother was sitting on the bird. I knew you would do something foolish behind my back, and scolded. You told me you would got rid of that creature, and all the time you have been hiding it from me. Grandfather tried to explain that we had nothing to do with it, that the python had smuggled itself into the tiffin basket, but grandmother was unconvinced. What will Mabel do when she sees it? She cried despairingly. So the grandfather told the other passengers that there was nothing to worry about the snake because it was harmless. And when grandmother came to know about the python, she scolded the grandfather and told about Mabel. What would happen if she came to know about the python? So children, let me stop here for today. We will continue with the remaining part of the chapter tomorrow in our next video. And we will also see about Mabel. We don't know who she is. So let me stop here. Stay home and stay safe.